Hello, and welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Damla Aktekin, who is a healer, coach, writer, and crystal healing teacher and enthusiast. She helps other self-healers and healers move beyond their energetic wounds and shine brighter than they thought possible so that they can show up fully in their lives to heal themselves, their families, and their soul tribe. She's the creator of the Chakra Bliss Healing Method that simplifies healing with crystals, author of life-changing daily practice journals and crystal healing journals, and the creator of the Crystal Healing Simplified online course, and a few other things. So Damla, I'm just excited to have you on the show and dig into some of this stuff because we haven't really talked a lot about energetic wounds and all this stuff on the show. So I'm really excited to have you here. So welcome.
Me too. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So we'll start with just share a little bit about, how you got into doing the work that you do and what led you to this point.
Well, my own healing and transformation, for one thing, the healing crises, multiple that I have been through. And it started with, I had a health crisis in 2001 while fresh out of my MBA, Business Administration Master. I launched into the corporate world. And then I found myself with chronic migraines. And that led me to going on a search of alternative paths, which led me to yoga, to meditation, to mantras. And then in 2012, I gave birth to my daughter through an emergency C-section. And that led to its own beautiful spiral because what I had known up until point, so with my education of engineering and business, I was in very much in my mind. And then with yoga and with, I was switching to my body. I was teaching full-time at that point when I became a mom and managing a yoga studio. And then with this next crisis, though, becoming a mom, I actually completely lost my connection to my body. So what I knew, the mind-based or the body-based approaches weren't working. I needed a completely new look and perspective in life, which led me to discovering crystals and diving deeper into mantras and sound healing and EFT tapping, and all of which I now know, looking back, were vibrational healing tools. So it's not just with the mind that we can figure things out, I've learned, or just with the body. We need to look what's common across all of those, and what's beyond those is our vibrational beingness, which is we don't end on our skin. We are beings of electricity and vibration and light that extend beyond our skin. We have energy fields. So now I'm a healer and a coach and a crystal enthusiast. I explore these with my clients.
Awesome. There's so much there we can unpack. And, I've shared multiple times on the show, but because I'm in this PhD program that's based in quantum physics, like what you're describing is actually explained by quantum physics. So, we are energy and light and kind of this connection of stuff that is how we show up. And so it's really interesting to just look at how that relates to our healing capabilities too. But in diving, I'm also really curious about crystals because in chiropractic school, we used to always joke, everyone would ask about, was crystals on your national board exam? And they weren't actually. And I know there's a lot of power inside of that. So let's dive in. Let's first start with, because I know you talk a lot about energetic wounds, and I was really curious about this when I came across you and we connected. So can you explain what is an energetic wound, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So anything that is not that, or that hasn't been life-giving or life-affirming, will leave a mark on you. And it's not just going to leave a physical mark in the case of physical abuse or accidents or violence or surgeries. It will also leave an energetic mark in your system, which will get triggered over time. Mm-hmm. But what I find as a healer is that, first of all, my entry point is the chakra system. We can talk a lot more about that.
Yeah.
And I also, through my journey of daily self-healing practices that sort of led me to healing others, I've discovered that I'm able to sense and feel into these fields that we're talking about, the quantum essence, if you will, and then sort of sense what knots might be there. And in those knots, when we enter them, we find there are multiple things. There's the experience of the physical, there's the emotional, there are other elements of beliefs that got etched into our system.
Mm-hmm.
So my job as a healer is to create a container to look at those with you and begin to sort of unwind that ball of yarn that has been created in your system, which, by the way, you feel in your body as discomfort. You can also feel it as bursting emotions or numbing or avoiding strategies like addiction or closing yourself off. So the wounds show up in different ways, but usually what happens is we are susceptible to be wounded through our genealogy or through the way we were born or through what we already absorbed from our mom and our environment. We usually get our first wound affects one or two chakras, and then things build upon that. And we can unpack that too. But for me, a wound is sort of the entry point to discover, okay, what hasn't been seen, heard, understood there yet. And then together with a client, we might go in, or you can use some self-healing tools to begin to touch that. But in my experience, you kind of need a guide. If it's an especially like tangled up wound, you need someone to hold your hand and not get overwhelmed with the size of the knots you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, it's profound on a level because, a lot of what I talk about is like getting to the root cause of our health issues, right? And you're, really truly getting there because it becomes about energy and, what our body has done with things that have happened to us over time. So I find that really interesting. We'll
Yeah.
just say, yeah.
Yeah, and your system already knows what's next. That's sort of what I try to show, rather than telling them what I'm already sensing, feeling, and noticing. My approach is more helping them understand their system, their body is already communicating to them. And there are ways to approach that and work with that
Yeah.
gently and lovingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the loving piece is huge because I know many of the women I talk to are, we're beating ourselves up because we can't lose the weight or we can't give up this thing or we, can't do XYZ or don't ever feel well and feel like we're doing all the things. And there's more to it, which is kind of what we're getting into with this.
Yeah, which to me again comes back to that numbing or avoiding or beating up. We should add to that.
Yeah.
And the strategies are not necessarily to blame, but they're just things we've learned and assumed to be love, or we observed and assumed to be love from what we've seen, what we've been exposed to this lifetime or others. So the deconditioning becomes a daily work of saying, okay, this strategy that I'm using, first of all, becoming aware even that you are numbing yourself or you have been ignoring this body part that has this blazing pain or not feeling or numbness, you have been ignoring it. And now you finally say, I'm willing, ready, and able to look at this and discover what wounds are there. And then it becomes a journey of, I like to explain it as the work that I do. I like to think of it in two elements. There's a self-healing part. You need to be doing your daily work. And then the healing part when you partner with a healer like me. And the self-healing, the daily part is crucial because imagine that you're a house and you come in and the first thing you want to do is on a daily or weekly basis to make sure that there's not dust. So you just do your vacuuming, maybe mop the floors. I don't know, brush your sinks or whatever it is that you do. And then my job is when you come in, say, oh, okay, you've been doing the daily work. Great. Now we can open up that cupboard, that chakra, and let's unpack everything that you've been hiding at the back of the closet. Let's bring them out into the light. And then we'll just throw away what needs to be thrown away and give some honoring and love to what needs to be loved and displayed, and so on. But if you come to me with your house unclean, before we can go into the cupboards, we need to do general house cleaning. And the same with after. If you've been working with me for a while, 3 sessions, 5 sessions, a year, I'm going to say at the end of it or during it, you still need those daily practices. It's like brushing your teeth to maintain a certain level of kindness to yourself, so we can jump to the back of the cupboard.
Got it. I love that. And I love that analogy because I think so many of us can relate to, like, I've been on a decluttering mission in my actual house, this spring. And I just love the idea of, like, we have to do that with our body too, because we carry around so much stuff and it messes with our system on an energetic level, as we're talking about.
Yeah,
So,
and you to decide what that daily practice looks like for you. Maybe it is just opening a window and taking 3 breaths. Maybe it is being seated in meditation. For me, it is. Or perhaps it's working with crystals or working with a dedicated mantra. And then it becomes, okay, perhaps choosing one practice that you're drawn to. And again, for me, that was the crystal healing. That was the mantra practice. You need to figure out what's yours. And then saying, okay, I'm going to take 21 days or 40 days and really commit to this practice and see, see what level of kindness I can maintain towards myself. And what happens is when you commit to the practice also commits to you. So it begins to show you as little hidden joys, and it begins to open up for you little cabinets you haven't quite opened up yet. So, and then the next moment you're ready to open up like a bigger cabinet and take out a bigger nut to look at.
Yeah.
You have a solid basis that you can rely on, you can get back to. So that becomes your haven, that your refuge when you need some support.
No, that's great. And it's like, I talk about this a lot. It's like you're building a new muscle to really help support yourself. And, you got to work it, and gradually you get stronger and stronger and are able to take on more and more. So that's really
And
cool.
not only that, what if you were not only doing it to get to stronger muscles or to the end results, but you were loving the practice. You were being devoted to the practice. And one of the ways I help encourage people with that is I have practice journals that they can actually find and purchase. And it's one of them is a 40-day peace mantra journal. And the other one is a crystal healing journal. For 21 days, you get to be with 1 to 7 crystals that you choose. But the thing there isn't, to check one more thing in your to-do box. It's to really be with that practice, to really breathe with that practice and see, and to hit the walls where you're resisting the practice. That is the practice. The practice isn't to say Om Shanti Om Peace Om 108 times, like real quick and you're done. No, you stay with the saying it out loud or saying it internally, and you hit those knots. And then over time you'll be like, okay, I know you're there, but let me just say this a little gentler then. Like, I feel like we're resisting each other. So you learn to have a conversation with yourself. And the same with crystals. The same crystal that you have been having on your shelf for 10 plus years has a lot to say to you. Have you taken the time to hold it in your hands in a way that you would hold a baby, a pet? Because this is another vibrational structure. I'm hesitant to use being for, it's strange to some people, but this is another vibrational geometric electrical structure. And so are you. Your fascia is made up of crystals. The water in you is a liquid crystal. Your DNA is a liquid crystal. Your bones are made up of actual minerals and crystals. So you have a lot in common with this physical structure that you can hold in your hands and appreciate. And imagine appreciating this crystal for 21 days, for 42 days, for more days. And then you could potentially do the same with yourself. All of a sudden, the way you hold yourself changes. The way you relate to yourself changes. You become less of a project that needs completion, more of a beingness that you get to appreciate.
I love that. Something that's been coming up a lot on the show is, the context of who are we being, and you're really tapping into like becoming a being with you, like, of love and light and all the things that, for yourself first, and then that automatically goes out to the world, which is really cool.
The other thing that happens when you lean on those daily practices, daily touch points with life in you and around you, is that the weight of your wounds, because our wounds are not static, they're dynamic quantum beings. And the more you can relax into the moment, the more they ease and relax their hold on you too. That's the other thing I'm discovering in myself, and for people that I work with, or people who choose to engage with my work, is the daily practice does something that changes the way you engage with the wound, and it changes the way you get activated by the wound. And it in time, it begins to change the wound itself too. So it's so precious, and it's so easy to just sit down for 5 minutes, to breathe with the window open. Just sit down with 5 to 10 minutes with a crystal in your hand. Sit down with your mala, with the 108 bead, necklace, and chant, something you like. It doesn't have to be a Sanskrit mantra. You could just say peace. You could just say joy. So it just feels, it's imagining your container as this big bowl. You're dripping this goodness every single day. So eventually your bowl is going to fill up and overflow.
Yeah. I don't know about people listening, but I'm kind of like getting this just like really peaceful vision of I'm like, that sounds really nice. Can I just do that all day long?
Yeah.
So there's kind of like two pieces to this that I wanted to expand on a little bit for our listeners, because I think a lot of this might be, new to a lot of people. And so maybe the first we should talk about is just the chakras. Like, what are they? Because I've alluded specifically to the throat chakra and related to thyroid, because that's something I've experienced, and a lot of the women I work with have experienced. But maybe you can just help me run through, like, what are they? How are they connected?
Well, physically, they're energy vortexes. They are just like a whirlpool in your bathtub. They rotate in two directions, actually, in front of the body and behind the body, in certain electrical crossroads, if you will. And they take in and redistribute energy through smaller chakras in your body and in your system. So that's physically what they are. Even though you don't see them, you can actually, after a little training, you can feel them with the palm of your hand. You sort of get stopped where these centers are. One is your throat, like you were mentioning, one is the heart. There are different systems that work with 12 chakras, 7 chakras in the yoga system. There are actually 144,000 chakras in your body.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, because there are big and small energy vortexes that work together.
Yeah.
But energetically and on a quantum level, the chakra system is also an archetypal and symbolic evolutionary map. So we get born, the first chakra, that's the container. We get born into the body. And the first chakra is the one that forms the first, because we then learn to hold our pee.
Yeah.
We hold our pee. So we stand up, the legs, and then we hold our pee. And then the second thing we learn to do is right above, below the belly button, is the second chakra, which is where the kidneys are associated with it, your sensuality, your sexual organs are associated with it. And the sense of flow, things coming in and out, like your emotions. So if you look at a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, they're learning to hold their emotions in the container of their body. And a lot of times things get overflowing.
Yeah.
Things flow.
I always say 3 was so much worse than 2. That's probably why.
But then the third thing we learn is above the belly button, below the diaphragm, is the third chakra, is self-control, self-power, being empowered. Now we not only exist in a body, we not only have emotions that we don't quite know what they're about. We now can say, oh, I like this meal, I don't like this meal, I like this friend, I don't like this friend. So you begin to go into the realm of boundaries.
Okay.
Then comes the heart, the extension are the arms. And this is the place of you became an individual by owning your power. Now you are existing in the universe, in the community as a person. And you can't exist alone. You exist in community. And you give and receive things. You give things and you receive things. And there needs to be a balance with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to express yourself creatively with your word, with your life, with the way you are, the way you dress. Now we're going into the teenage years. You begin to find your individuality through, there's creation on the second chakra too, but this is a more refined expression on the fifth chakra, the throat. And then you begin to realize, coming into the sixth chakra, you begin to realize there are things unseen, there are things, there are deeper things to understand and be with. There are political issues, there are spiritual issues. So you begin to go deeper into life. And then the seventh chakra is your relationship to time and your relationship to your soul purpose. And you begin to say, okay, I have this physical body, the emotions, the connections, the creativity, the inner seeing. Now, what do I do with this?
Got it.
What do I do with this? In terms of wounds, they can manifest a million different ways.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a child who wasn't seen, heard, wasn't spoken to, so there's a chance that the wound may show up physically here, but there's a chance that you took not feeling seen, heard, and understood and listened to as a indication that you weren't lovable.
Mm-hmm.
And that made you sad, then it might show up in your heart as this weight, as this knot. Or let's say you took all of that, you weren't seen, understood, your needs weren't met the way
Mm-hmm.
you needed them. It might show up in your third chakra, in your personal power, as anger for things that have been unjust or for things that could have been. So there's a million ways the wounds show up in your energetic ecology. The thing to know about that is you don't need to know anything about chakras to work with the chakras. You just close your eyes and you follow your body. And to me, as a healer, when you close your eyes in a session and you say, Damla, I'm feeling a big rock on my belly on the left side. I know we're going to go into issues that has to do with the mother, with the powerlessness, or if you feel a knot on the right side, I know there might be issues of hidden pain, trauma, and hidden anger. So it's my job to evaluate that. But for you, let's say that you found that knot somewhere in your body. I don't know, your right shoulder, because we're carrying the weight of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just close your eyes and think of what that reminds you of. What does it feel like?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to describe it, for me, this is like carrying that added weight. So you begin to tell the story of that knot. And then you just begin to ask questions to it. What do you need? How can I support you? How can I balance things? What can I let go of a little bit? So all of this sounds very like, you might think to yourself, you're doing this, but the way to know that it's working is that you will feel an actual physical relief there
Mm-hmm.
when you're able to make contact and when you're able to release some of the weight. And that's what I do in my one-on-one client work. And then what happens with the daily practices, you may become more in touch with where those points are, or where the knots are in your energy system.
Yeah. And that's all about, getting connected to ourselves. I think so many of us go through life not paying any attention to us, like the physical vessel, until something happens that forces us to. I know that was my own story, and that's a lot of the women that I work with. And so I love this as just a general practice to like stay in tune. And
yeah, and then the thing to remember is the chakras don't stay static either. Same with
right.
we actually are more open in the morning, in the evening, just like a flower, we're a little bit more closed. Depending on when you're in your moon cycle, I find that the closer I am to when my moon cycle starts, my chakras are a little tighter. My energy field is like, let me go inward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then during ovulation, I go a little bit more like a blooming flower. But so you gotta find, again, that touch point of relating to yourself is so important, because your needs change every single day, every single moment. To be able to say, just like you were mentioning, instead of just going through the day with no mind, with no attention, to say, okay, what it is that I need right now, and go from there. That being
And
your
then do it and not feel guilty, or convince ourselves that someone else's needs are greater than ours, because I talk a lot about that and how we put everyone else before ourselves as well.
How you can be still lovable if you disappoint others by putting your own needs first.
Yeah, definitely. And so you explained a little bit about this, but I just had, for my listeners, I'm sure they have questions too. Like, crystals are completely new to me. So, are there and I totally understand and can visualize, them as a tool to help rebalance us bioenergetically, just because they contain some of that energy. But are there certain types of crystals? Like, do some crystals have different energy versus others? Like, is there a place to start if you're totally new to that? I don't know what insight you have there.
You start today. You start with the crystal you have.
Okay.
In your jewelry box or in your windowsill. And then the next question to ask is not, you take your crystal and you don't ask, what can you do for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you meet a person, you don't ask that question. You say, hi. Or when you meet another energetic being that you consider respectful and honorable, which, by the way, crystals are ancestors. They've been here for millennia, and they are your building blocks. They contribute to the life that you are. So they are your ancestors. So you say your name and you introduce yourself to a person, and then you begin to get to know them. That's my approach, at least. I actually tried when I became a first, and I became a mom and had my, I don't know, stumbling. I got interested in crystals, and my first impulse as an engineer and as a previously, corporate person is,
Mhm.
let me read everything.
Yeah.
But it's so unsatisfactory, even online. Everything is like Rose course does this, and then another source says something else. And I found wanting to come back to the experience that I was having with the crystals, which was I could feel that there was an energetic conversation going on that didn't need to be named, classified, limited by
Mhm.
someone else's experience. So I do have an online course called Crystal Healing Simplified, where I teach how and why crystals work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we could go into with that. But for the sake of keeping it simple, it's simply a combination of you. Crystal healing is you, your
Mhm.
crystal, your intention, and time. Whether it's the time you spend on that particular meditation or the time you keep coming back to it, that creates crystal healing magic. You can complicate that for sure. You can say, I only need rose quartz for this issue. I only need a blue crystal for my throat because the blue is the color of that chakra. Of course, you can go that route, and people have amazing experiences that way too. But I honestly didn't. And I've had amazing experiences. I actually found out that I'm a clairaudient and clairvoyant through repeated dedicated crystal healing that I have been doing on myself. And crystals can open many doors for you, but you gotta choose how you relate to them in a way that's loving and cultivate that relationship. So if you're curious about that, you could certainly take a look at my crystal healing journal, which gives you a little mini introduction and then walks you through a 21-day practice with 21 different ways to connect with your crystals. But also, if you're just wanting to do this on your own, just get started. Don't wait for being an expert. What does an expert mean? It's someone who did the same thing that you would be doing. They took a couple crystals. That's how it all starts. Or I don't know, maybe they had them from childhood from their mom or dad, and then they began to explore, and then they wrote down what they explored. So why shouldn't you do that for yourself? Why should you limit yourself to someone else's observation in place of acquiring and living in your own lived experience? That's the way I see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I really like that. And, I think it's easy. We always want to look outside of ourselves for answers or out, I know I did a lot of that when I was going through kind of a traumatic marriage and divorce, and I was seeking an answer from anyone but me because I didn't like the answer that I was coming up with. But I think this, that's kind of just a contextualization, but, don't be afraid to look within ourselves, because ultimately our bodies are intuitive and they tell us stuff when you tune in long enough to.
Yeah, and that's not to say if you encounter something that feels overwhelming, by all means, get help.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the initial touch points, again, your system and the crystals will not take you to where you are not going to be able to handle it. They're very gentle, and your system already knows what it can let go of through that daily practice. So all you need to do is get started.
Awesome. Well, where can people go to learn more and connect with you, Damla?
Yeah, so they can go to adropofom.com. My name means a droplet in Turkish, and a drop of om is actually the symbol for the vibration that we carry, and a symbol of what is in the universe is also in you. So we are droplets of vibration swimming in a sea of vibration. And there's so much beauty and healing potential in that. If you were to see yourself just as a physical body, and things are hard to change in that physical body, versus when you're a vibrational being, the possibilities are limitless.
Yeah.
So at dorpoform.com, I actually have a quiz they can take called Your Energetic Wounds quiz that will help you discover what specific energetic wounds you have and how they show up in your life. So that's the starting point. You need to figure out what the wounds are to get to the next step, which is healing them. I have a bunch of different tools. I mentioned the journals. I have a mantra healing, a mantra practice journal. I have a crystal healing journal. And then I have a few online courses. And the other resource that's out there for people is that I have an online monthly membership where I share crystal energy healing sessions on a monthly basis, which are meant to help support your energy system in the best possible way and help you begin to dive into those wounds. Perhaps you're not quite ready to work with a healer just yet, but you want to sort of get an understanding and begin to dive into those wounds. So that would be the next step. And you can find me on Instagram, Edward of Om, on Facebook. I'm pretty accessible. So I look forward to connecting with the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put links to all those things, or at the very least social media and your website in the show notes. But I know I learned a lot from this, and just you've got me thinking on a whole new level. So I appreciate you coming on and just sharing your expertise and knowledge with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.